the Imam, rahimahullah, as is befitting for someone of his stature, he begins with the great Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. And many of you know Abu Bakr as-Siddiq as the closest of the Prophet's companions, the closest of his companions, and the first of the believers. But before Islam, the great companion Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he was known as Abdul Kaaba. That was the name that his father gave him, which means the worshipper of the Kaaba. Having been born in a pagan society, but they had many names of that similitude: Abdul Shams, Abdul Kaaba, worshipper of the sun, worshipper of the Kaaba, etc., etc. He was also called Atiq, and this is due to his very beautiful face. He was described as being light, pale, if you will, for the Arab. The Arab tribes of Quraysh are of varying different shades, and Abu Bakr was rather light. He was thin, his face was thin, and his eyes were set back into his head, meaning that he had a brow. Of course, he was later renamed by the Prophet ﷺ after the advent of Islam and his embracing of the faith. So his proper name, and this is where we jump into the text, was Abdullah ibn Abu Quhafa, or ibn Abi Quhafa. So Abu Quhafa, of course, was his father, and his father's name was Uthman ibn Amr, ibn Amr, ibn Ka'b, ibn Sa'ad, ibn Taym, ibn Murrah, ibn Ka'b, ibn Lu'ay, ibn Ghalib at-Taymi. So that Sa'ad ibn Taym is one of the forefathers in which the clan was named after. Of course, he's from the Quraysh. He's at-Taymi al-Qurashi. The same tribe as the Prophet ﷺ, but here you can see there's a divergence when it comes to the clan. The Qurashi tribe had multiple different clans. And so Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was from the Taymi clan. His lineage met with that of the Messenger ﷺ at Murrah ibn Ka'b. And so they were related to one another some degree back. His mother was al-Khair Salma bint Sakhr ibn Amr ibn Ka'b ibn Sa'ad ibn Taym ibn Murrah. So both of his mother and father accepted Islam, alhamdulillah. Abu Bakr brought his father to the Prophet ﷺ during Am al-Fath, which was basically the reconquering of Mecca. And it was there that Uthman ibn Amr accepted Islam with the Prophet ﷺ. And he actually passed away after his son's death. So he outlived his own son, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And his mother also passed away as a Muslim. So that's truly a great blessing that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he lived for 63 years. And this was just like his best friend, the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. Abu Bakr was born in Mecca about 2.5 years after the year of the elephant, which means that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was older than he was just by a few years. And though he was born in that pagan society, as his name indicates, Abdul Kaaba, he didn't actually worship idols. The Prophet ﷺ also was preserved by Allah from doing such things. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq also did not consume intoxicants. He didn't drink alcohol, which was prevalent in his community. He recognized very early on that it clouded the intellect, and he believed that detracted from one's dignity. He also avoided gatherings of sin even before Islam. So he would not, mix with his own people while they were busy with vice and evil, but would only accompany them in righteousness and good manner. He was the first of this nation to accept Islam. He was the best of them after Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So There is scholarly debate as to who actually accepted Islam first. There's a multitude of opinions, and there are different narrations that lead the scholars to different conclusions. Some of the narrations even indicate that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was not the first, second, third, or fourth, but was way on down there, like 20s and 30s have already embraced Islam. And they indicate that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was actually away during the advent of the mission. When the Prophet ﷺ began to preach secretly, he was away on a business trip in Yemen. However, what seems preponderant, and what the great Imams have concluded, the likes of Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala, is that the safest thing to say is that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was the first of the free men to embrace Islam. From the youth was Ali ibn Abi Talib. He was the first of the youngins. The first woman was Khadija. From the servants was Zayd, and from the enslaved was Bilal. These were all the firsts. Who came first in that group? Well, you can get into the nitty-gritty. Was it Khadija first, or Abu Bakr first, or was it Zayd first, or obviously Bilal came after, later on. Also, as mentioned here, as the Imam mentions, the best of them after Allah's Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. What does that mean? The Imam is indicating something important, which was also mentioned by Ibn Balban. If you've been following that class, you will remember that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is the foremost of the companions in rank and virtue. He follows after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Muslim Ummah. But by and large, we understand, and it is well known, that the Muslim nation is the best nation of all who have come before, and that Abu Bakr is the best of this nation after the Prophet ﷺ, and therefore he is the best of creation in every way, character, righteousness, and religiosity after the prophets and messengers. So in that order, the Prophet ﷺ being the first and the pinnacle of Allah's creation, and then the other prophets and messengers, beginning with Ulul Azm, the mighty, strong-willed messengers, and then the remaining prophets, or the remaining messengers, the remaining prophets, and then who? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He is the best, and he holds, of course, a very, very lofty position. As many of you know, he is called as-Siddiq, and the reason for that is because he was given this title by the Prophet ﷺ, and actually it is a divinely inspired title, and this was immediately after the Isra wa Mi'raj. And this was an event in which the Prophet ﷺ traveled by night to Bayt al-Maqdis from Mecca and ascended to the heavens. Numerous things happened there, miraculous things that took place. And then when the Prophet ﷺ returned before daybreak, he began to tell people of what happened, and many people were tested and challenged. When the idolaters found out about this, they used it against the Muslim community to try and incite doubt within them. And a number of the early believers, they did doubt, and they began to deny. And they even went to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, who was just Abu Bakr at the time, and they began to ask and to question and to try and incite doubt. It was reported by al-Hakim in his collection of hadith that Aisha radiallahu anha, she actually narrates what transpired. And she says that some of the Quraysh approached Abu Bakr and said, "What do you have to say about your companion who claims he was taken to Bayt al-Maqdis by night?" And he says, "Awaqala dhalik," is that what he said? And of course they said, yes, he really did say that. And they were being truthful. Of course, they were not trying to make up a lie, which they had done, or they would end up doing along the way. So Abu Bakr, he says, لَإِنْ قَالَ ذَلِكَ لَقَدْ صَدَقَ. If he actually said that, then he is saying the truth. He's being truthful. And they said to him, أَوَتُصَدِّقُهُ أَنَّهُ ذَهَبَ اللَّيْلَةَ إِلَى بَيْتِ الْمَقْدِسِ وَجَاءَ قَبْلَ أَنْ يُصْبِحَ. Are you really going to believe that he went all the way to Bayt al-Maqdis, which is in Jerusalem. And that's like a month journey going and a month journey coming back, according to their mode of transportation on horseback, camel, or by foot. It's at least a month to get there and at least a month to come back. And they're like, how can you believe him that he went all the way there and came back before the morning? And he said, yes, إني لأصدقه في ما هو أبعد من ذلك أصدقه في خبر السماء في غدوة أو روحة. He says, I believe in something much more unconventional than that. I believe that he receives revelation from the heavens morning and night. And so this strong stance that was taken by Abu Bakr is what earned him the title as Siddiq. This is what earned him the title as Siddiq. It means not the truthful, but it means the believer. It means the one who confirms. It means the one that adopts. And by doing that, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq defended the faith and stood as an example until this very day in how a person is to respond to such doubtful or attempts at causing doubt within the heart of the faithful. And this was a divine title. And this was a divine title mentioned or narrated by Ali ibn Abi Talib. It's important here that we take note of the support that Ali ibn Abi Talib gave and the narrations that he transmitted regarding Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and his lofty status, so that we are not confused as to, did all of the companions recognize Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to be the best? Or was there some contention and then later on would lead us to a different conclusion? So, this was reported by a couple of the great Imams of Hadith, Ad-Daraqutni and al-Hakim. They said, we cannot count how many times we have heard that, or this is the narration. The narrator said, I cannot count how many times I heard Ali ibn Abi Talib say on the minbar, إن الله سمى أبا بكر على لسان نبيه صديقا. Says that how many times I heard him say while he was preaching on the minbar that Allah named Abu Bakr Siddiq by way of his Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Meaning it was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that said it, but it was inspired by Allah. It was also reported by Imam al-Tabarani with a sound chain of narration that Hakim ibn Sa'd, he said, سمعت عليا يحلف بالله لأنزل الله اسم أبي بكر من السماء الصديق. That he swore by Allah that it was Allah that sent down the name of Abu Bakr from the heavens as Siddiq. And then Ali, he also said, رضي الله عنه, في قوله تعالى والذي جاء بالصدق وصدق به أولئك هم المتقون. Basically what means, this is in Surah Al-Zumar, verse number 33, he says, and who has come with the truth and has believed, indeed they are the pious. He says this is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. This verse is referring to Abu Bakr because he is as-Siddiq, the one who saddaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Other great imams like al-Hafidh al-Dhahabi, from the, I guess the guardians of Islam, those that have preserved the tradition through their chains of narration and their collections of hadith and various statements of the righteous, and the imams and the leaders, they said that Abu Bakr, he was the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, all the way until the Prophet ﷺ passed away. He did not leave his side during travel or residency, except when he was permitted to do so. Also, fil khuruji fihi min hajjin aw ghazwin. Basically, he went out with the Prophet ﷺ whenever he was to make hajj or whenever he was to go into battle, which means that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he was there with the Prophet ﷺ in all of the battles, which is a huge honor. And when you look at the companions, that's a way, or that's kind of a mi'yar. It's like a measure, if you will, of the companions' virtue. Some of them were able to attend all of them, and that's like it increases their status, and some of them did not attend all of them. Some of them were excused from 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever the case may be. However, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he was there for all of them. And he also migrated with the Prophet ﷺ. You know, he was chosen to be his companion in the migration, and his family had a great deal to do with that. He left his family and his children behind because he wanted to be with the Prophet ﷺ. And go over here. There we go. It's a little confusing with that paper that I printed out. But I'm definitely on track now. All right, cool. All right, so he was also his companion when they were stuck in the cave, hiding from the what you call the bounty hunters. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. Basically, the two that were in the cave, when one of them said, the companion, and this is Allah acknowledging the companionship or affirming the companionship of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in the Quran, when the companion said, لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا, do not be worried, do not be worried, for indeed Allah is with us, Surah At-Tawbah, verse number 40. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq also spent a great deal of his wealth for the Prophet ﷺ. He was the most generous of the companions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَسَيُجَنَّبُهَا الْأَتْقَى الَّذِي يُؤْتِي مَالَهُ يَتَزَكَّى. Right, in Surah Al-Layl, verse number 17. Those that they will be safe from it are the most pious, those who give of their wealth. And, you know, obviously to the end of the verse, and Imam al-Hafidh ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah ta'ala al-Hanbali, the great scholar and master of hadith, he said that there is an agreement, almost saying that there's a consensus here, أجمعوا أنها نزلت في حق أبي بكر الصديق, right? That this verse was revealed because of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, by the way that he would spend his wealth and practically open up his pockets to the Prophet ﷺ, to the point that the Prophet ﷺ said that he would spend Abu Bakr's wealth as if it was his very own wealth. Great Imam Ahmad reported on Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, مَا نَفَعَنِي مَالٌ قَطْ مَا نَفَعَنِي مَالُ أَبِي بَكْرٍ as-Siddiq. There's no wealth that has benefited me like that of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And then Abu Bakr, he heard this and he began to cry. He says, هَلْ أَنَا وَمَالِي إِلَّا لَكَ يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. He says, am I or my wealth belong to nothing, no one except for you, O Messenger of Allah. Basically, I and my wealth are in no one's service except for you. Alayhi salatu wassalam. Other hadith reported, Abu Ya'la, this is reported from Aisha radiallahu anha. She reported a very similar hadith of this nature. And then there was reports from the great Imam al-Hafidh ibn Kathir. It was also reported by al-Khatib on Sa'id ibn Musayyib. Also, it was said by the Prophet ﷺ, يَقْضِي فِي مَالِ أَبِي بَكْرٍ كَمَا يَقْضِي فِي مَالِ نَفْسِهِ. Basically, he would, he would utilize the wealth of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq like someone utilized their own wealth. Abu Bakr was also a great, very, very prominent preacher and caller to Islam. He was responsible for the conversion or the embracing of many to the faith. And some of those included the likes of Uthman ibn Affan, who would later become the third Khalifa, we'll talk about, Az-Zubayr, Talha ibn Ubaidillah, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. Many of them are from the list of the 10 companions promised paradise. So, ni'ma salaf, right? What a great predecessor to have, a great person to have, been the influencer to bring you into Islam. And it's no wonder that those that followed after him would follow so closely behind him into Al-Jannah, because he was the one that was leading the way. And a lot of that had to do with his very, very close relationship with the Prophet ﷺ. Also was Abu Salama, Khalid ibn Sa'id, Abu Hudhayfa ibn al-Mughira, and obviously there were many others that joined Islam because of the influence of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, including the likes of Bilal and others. To the point that the Quraysh actually began to fear Abu Bakr's interaction with his community. And they wanted to isolate him from everyone. To the point that he had to make a deal, he had to cut a deal with them in order to remain in Mecca under the protection of an outsider, that he would not leave the home for prayer or recite the Quran or engage people in dawah activity, because they knew that he had already converted so many people. He had a very special relationship with the Prophet ﷺ, as I mentioned. The Prophet ﷺ, he said this report in Sahih al-Bukhari wa Muslim, لو كنت متخذا خليلا غير ربي لاتخذت أبا بكر ولكن أخوة الإسلام. If I was going to take a khalil, an intimate friend, besides my Lord, then I would have taken Abu Bakr, but between us is the brotherhood of Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ also said that was obviously اتخاذ الخليل في الدنيا, right? He had the akhuwatul Islam in this life, the brotherhood of Islam. And then he says to Abu Bakr in another hadith, he says, أنت صاحبي على الحوض وصاحبي في الغار. You are my companion and friend at the pond, al-Hawd, which is al-Jannah, as you are my companion in the cave. Right. During his reign, later obviously after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, we know that he was appointed by the companions to be the Khalifa. He did many great things. He managed the apostasy wars, those people that began to deny the obligation of zakat right away. Even some of the companions that were close to him were trying to get him to concede and make concessions for them. Because of the pending threat from Rome and Persia, they wanted the Muslims to remain united so that they could defend the lands and the territory. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was absolutely adamant that they not give way and make those types of concessions for fear that it would deteriorate the faith. He would basically be chipping away a pillar of Islam. And as you know, the importance of zakat and the impact that it can have on the community, if you strip that away, then it will absolutely devastate the Muslim Ummah. And so he stood his ground, and the companions that tried to get him to concede, they quickly realized their mistake, and so they stood behind him, and he managed to fight, if you will, for the cause of the faith and bring those people back. He also served as the commander of the army that defeated Musaylama al-Kadhab in the war of Yamama, one of the false prophets. A number of them popped up after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, and it was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq that was able to lay waste to such imposters. He also opened several regions, including the areas in Iraq and Sham during his reign. And during his time as the Khalifa, he was the first to introduce Bayt al-Mal, and also returned the money that he was given to serve in his position back to Bayt al-Mal before he passed away. He was also the first to collect the Mus'haf, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And so the Prophet ﷺ, there are many things. This is just like a survey of his life. There's so many things that could be said. However, the Prophet ﷺ, in one narration, he says, "Hubbu Abi Bakrin wa shukruhu wajibun ala ummati." For the many, many things that he did and the status that he had and the companionship and his level of faith, the Prophet ﷺ said, loving Abu Bakr and thanking him is an obligation upon my followers. So he held office in the Khilafah for 2.5 years, and some say it was 10 days short of 2 years and 4 months. Others say 2 years only, while still others say it was 20 months. What's most preponderant is the first opinion that Al-Hafidh Abdul-Ghani mentions here. It was, 2.5 years, 2 years and 6 months. And then he passed away at the age of 63, which is the same age that the Prophet ﷺ passed away at as well. He had a number of children. We'll go over this rather quickly. His children, Abdullah, who accepted Islam early and was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr when they were in the cave, he used to report back the news of Mecca and what was happening with the bounty hunters. He would bring food and supplies, etc. He was hit by an arrow at the battle of Al-Ta'if and died during the Khalifa of his father, Abu Bakr al-Siddiq. Asma bint Abi Bakr was nicknamed Dhat al-Nitaqayn, the woman of the two girdles, basically because she tore her girdle to bind the food to carry it for the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and her father when they were hiding from their enemies in the cave. This is what she did before they took off. She took off her girdle. It's like a belt, ripped it in half to tie up the food and supplies onto their camels. She was the wife of al-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, and she migrated to al-Madinah when she was pregnant. She later gave birth to Abdullah ibn Zubayr, who was the first Muslim to be born in al-Madinah after the migration. Her mother was Qutayla bint Abdul Uzza from the tribe of Amr ibn Lu'ay. Her mother died having never embraced Islam, and because of her lack of acceptance, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq divorced her at some point. Aisha as-Siddiqa, bint as-Siddiq as-Siddiqa, was, of course, one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, making Abu Bakr who? In relationship to the Prophet ﷺ, after marrying his daughter to him, he would be the father-in-law. What an honor. Though it's probably not appropriate to have that title, the father-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ, but it was the relation that he had with him. Abdurrahman was Aisha's maternal brother. He witnessed and fought in the Battle of Badr against the Muslims, but he later accepted Islam. Their mother was Ruman, the daughter of Amr ibn Uwaymir ibn Abd al-Shams ibn Attab ibn Udayna ibn Subay ibn Dhuman ibn Harith ibn Ghanam ibn Malik ibn Kinana, again from the Qurashi tribe. She accepted Islam, migrated, and died during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. Abu Atiq, Muhammad ibn Abdurrahman. This is obviously the son of Abdurrahman, who is the grandson of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, was born during the lifetime of Allah's Messenger ﷺ. And the Imam says, we do not know among the companions of the Prophet ﷺ any four other than these, some of whom were the parents of others. These were not the only children. The other children was Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr, or ibn Abi Bakr, was born in the year of the farewell pilgrimage, and his mother was Asma bint Umais al-Khat'amiyya. He was later killed in Egypt, where he was buried. Kulthum bint Abi Bakr was born after the death of Abu Bakr. Basically, his wife was pregnant, and then he passed away, and then she delivered. Her name was Habiba, and some say her name was Fakhita bint Kharija ibn Zayd ibn Abi Zuhair al-Ansari. She later married Talha ibn Ubaidillah. The Imam concludes here, he says he had 3 sons and 3 daughters, 6 kids altogether. All of them were companions of the Prophet ﷺ, except for Kulthum and Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, who was born during the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Some debate this, and they say that he was carried to the Prophet ﷺ, and so he was in his presence. So technically he is a companion. But here, obviously, the great Imam al-Hafiz, that's a key thing here, al-Hafiz. This means like a master of hadith, a master of the tradition. His conclusion was that no, he did not, by any, form or fashion, become a companion, though he was born during the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq died in Jumad al-Akhir, while 3 nights remained during the year of 13 Hijrah, and he was to be buried next to his companion, the Prophet ﷺ.